Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of SpaceX's X-37B launch aboard a Falcon Heavy launching from Launch Complex 39A at NASA Kennedy Space Center in Florida. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launch Pad, and here at the Launch Pad Network, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. We are now counting down just under 19 minutes and counting till launch of the 3-core Falcon Heavy rocket from Launch Complex 39A. As we get started, as always, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from, as well as you can share out the stream, invite people to join us. We've got Rasmus in Sweden. Sorry if I said that wrong. Roger is in Finland. We got Hay in Downey, California. We got Cap in North Georgia. Noah is in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. We got Roger in Casper, Wyoming, Steers in Ohio, and Windbreaker in Arkansas. Take a moment. You can see on your screen there, everything is green across the board. I know we have a number of our rocket chasers down on location spread across the Cape covering today's flight from not only the press site, but the Saturn V Visitor Center and the area. So make sure you follow us on X as well as join us on the TLP Discord to see the photos as they come in from our crew. We've been hearing reports all day that it is busier than even Artemis 1's launch night down there for today. It's a Falcon Heavy with a double booster landing back at the landing zones, and it's during holiday break, so lots of people have come over to the Space Coast for today's flight. If you happen to be in a northeasterly trajectory from the Space Coast up the eastern seaboard of the United States, tonight's your night. Falcon Heavy is launching that direction, and you may be able to see Falcon Heavy depending on your weather conditions and visibility. As we continue to count down now, just over 17 minutes till flight, we're going to run through everything we know about today's flight while we wait for SpaceX to begin their live feed. And once they do so, we will, of course, patch them in and listen into mission control through the final bit of the count. We are keeping an eye on all of the weather coming in from both NASA Kennedy Space Center and the U.S. Space Force, but everything looking really great for today's flight. Propellant load well underway on all 3 core stages, as well as the second stage of Falcon Heavy. Now, some of you might be asking, why does it say it's a classified mission, it's a classified vehicle, but we know what's happening? Well, it's kind of hard to hide a rocket launching off of the Space Coast, so we do know that on board today's Falcon Heavy rocket is the U.S. Space Force's X-37B. The X-37B is a classified aircraft that goes up into orbit and can stay for extended periods of time. The last orbital vehicle mission kicked off on May 17th, 2020, and didn't end until November 12th, 2022, spending 908 days, 21 hours, and 8 minutes for that mission. It launched aboard an Atlas V rocket. That was the last mission was the third flight of the first X-37B, but they have 2. So tonight we will not actually get to see it, but this is the first launch of an X-37B on a Falcon Heavy, but it is the 4th flight for the second X-37B. We don't know where it's going, we don't know what it's carrying, and we don't know when it's going to come home. We'll find that out eventually once it actually comes home, and the reason we know it came home is you can't hide a sonic boom from where it lands. So it's an interesting mission. It's classified. We don't know anything, but we know what's happening, and we're glad to have you joining us here for tonight's flight. Tonight's Falcon Heavy is made up of 3 boosters. Booster 1064 going for its 5th flight, 1065 going also for its 5th flight, and the core center stage is Booster 1084 going for its 1st and last flight tonight. Both the left and right side boosters will be landing back down at landing zone 1 or 2. So if you're in the Space Coast area, definitely head outside now, take a look around, as tonight you're going to have a beautiful flight, hopefully, as long as the weather maintains out, which it does look like it is doing. We're waiting for SpaceX to go live here, and it looks like they are, so we're going to patch them in and listen in to SpaceX Mission Control.
Comes to a close. Today's mission also marks our 95th launch of the year, with our final mission expected to lift off from our neighboring pad in Florida in about 3 hours from now. And you can see both of those rockets there on your screen. A big thanks to all of our customers and the SpaceX team for a record-breaking year. Now, today's mission marks the second time the X-37B orbital test vehicle will take flight on a SpaceX launch vehicle. Some of you may recall the first flight on Falcon 9 back in September of 2017, in which OTV-5 spent a record 780 days in orbit, breaking the vehicle's own endurance record. Here's a closer look at today's payload.
And it sounds like they have some exciting energy, and they're going to let us know a little bit about this classified mission. If you ever happen to visit the Space Coast and gone on one of their behind-the-gates tours at NASA Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, it's really interesting. This classified vehicle is homed in a massive building with a beautiful mural that says Home of the X-37B on it. It's one of the unique parts of the U.S. Space Force's program where they won't tell us much about it, but they'll tell us a little bit, and they'll tell us where they house it. You're seeing an animation of what will happen here. They do occasionally, it looks like, tell us a little bit about what's on board, but of course it's a classified mission, so ultimately we don't know everything that's on board. And with that last flight having taken over 900 days, there is a lot of science, research, and I'm sure military operations that will be conducted with today's X-37B once it's deployed. As it is a classified mission, we will not get to see the second stage of the flight. We will not see fairing deployment, and we will not get to see X-37B deployment as the actual orbit inclination that it's gone into is classified, and it will likely launch in a dogleg maneuver once we have separation from the first stage. T-minus 13 minutes, 13 seconds and counting till launch. Let's listen back into SpaceX Mission Control.
Due to bad weather, on our second attempt the following day, during the count, our teams reviewed data related to system checkouts, which resulted in a no-go condition and decision to stand down from launch that evening. We rolled the vehicle back to our hangar at Launch Complex 39A in Florida to be able to further assess data and address any issues. And during this time, the payload remained healthy and all systems are go for an on-time liftoff tonight. Weather is also looking great for today's T0. Today's flight will be on the Falcon Heavy that you see there on your screen. This is essentially 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together, which means that it can carry much larger payloads, not only to Earth orbit, but to the Moon and Mars as well. Like the Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy is a 2-stage launch vehicle. The big difference is that the Falcon Heavy first stage is comprised of 3 cores, and Falcon 9 has only 1. Falcon Heavy has 28 engines total. Each one of these cores has 9 M1D engines, making for a total of 27 engines across all 3 boosters, which you can see there on your screen. The 28th engine is a Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage and will power the payload to its separation orbit. Now, altogether, the Merlin 1D engines at the base of Falcon Heavy produce 5 million pounds of thrust, which is equal to 18 747s at takeoff. And in fact, the engines produce so much power that we don't run them all at full thrust all at once until after liftoff. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the 2 side boosters will separate from the center core and come back to Earth for near simultaneous landings at Landing Zone 1 and Landing Zone 2 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. This will be the 5th launch and landing of these Falcon Heavy side boosters, which previously supported USSF-54 and 67, Hughes Jupiter 3, and NASA's Psyche mission. Upon side booster separation, the center core will keep firing for about 90 seconds before shutting down its engines and then perform a standard stage separation from the second stage. We will not be attempting to land our center core today. For those of you looking closely, this is why you don't see any landing legs or grid fins on the center core. And moving towards the top of the vehicle, once the first and second stage separate, the second stage will propel our payload to its intended orbit. At our customer's request, we will not be showing views of stage 2, so immediately after the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage fires up, we'll be directing all of our attention to the landing of our side boosters. Now, above the second stage is where our payload is safely enclosed inside of the fairing. The fairing protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. We will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today with our recovery vessel, Doug. And at T-minus 10 minutes and 8 seconds, the SpaceX team continues to count down towards our 8th operational Falcon Heavy launch and 9th overall since taking flight in a demonstration test flight back in February of 2018. All systems are a go. Before we began the webcast, the SpaceX launch director polled the members of the launch team and got a go for propellant loading and launch. And we are currently loading propellant on all 3 first stage boosters as well as the second stage. And you may be able to hear some of the live rocket sounds from our launch pad. Those pops and hissing sounds that you hear are from are from propellant loading, as well as the launch mount and strong back that the propellant is flowing through. Falcon Heavy uses two propellants. One is a refined form of kerosene called RP1, or rocket propellant 1. That's our fuel. The other is our oxidizer, which is liquid oxygen, or commonly called LOX. An oxidizer is a type of chemical that releases oxygen to mix with fuel and allows it to burn. Liquid oxygen is chilled well below its boiling point so that it has a much greater amount of mass per volume, which basically means that we can load more of it into the rocket. As a fun fact, the Saturn V first stage flown from this very pad on the moon missions also used liquid oxygen and kerosene. In addition to these two propellants, we also use the chemical TTEB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, as an ignition source. The combustion of RP1 and liquid oxygen is what makes the rocket go or fly, and it's the TTEB that sets the match to the propellant mix. Today's mission is for the U.S. Space Force and is being overseen by Space Systems Command, or SSC.
Center core RP1 load is complete.
Space Systems Command is the U.S. Space Force's field command responsible for acquiring and delivering resilient capabilities and groundbreaking technologies to protect our nation's strategic advantage in and from space. For more on the SSC, let's take a listen.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are at T-minus 8 minutes and counting till SpaceX launches 3 cores of a Falcon 9 rocket, all linked together, creating tonight's Falcon Heavy from Launch Complex 39A at NASA Kennedy Space Center in Florida, carrying the U.S. Space Force's secret classified X-37B rocket. We are just about 40 seconds away from engine chill beginning on all of those Merlin 1D engines. All 27 will begin their engine chill in just a few moments, preparing for today's flight. They are going through final propellant loading and pressurization as well. We'll be listening back into mission control here in just a moment, but if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those. I saw one coming in asking, could they ever have people on board these from Hey Mo? Not on the 37Bs, but it's something they did consider for in the future, but not something they're super actively working towards at this point. But the Space Force is looking at a future with Starship. So there's a big question there. They have put funding into SpaceX to investigate the use of Starship for classified missions with crew or with cargo or both. And we'll hopefully know more of that in the near future. John Ferris, thanks so much for gifting that one membership there. If you guys like what we do and like to help support us in our mission to bring you the best possible coverage of everything space from around the world, you can hit that join button down below or head on over to the TLP Network shop, the launchpad.store. Use promo code LAUNCHDAY, gets you 10% off of everything over there on the store. And because I haven't done it yet, you can still get our holiday Christmas collection, but those are going to be going down after this flight. So it's your last chance to get a hand on one of those, but still can get some of our TLP launch gear with global shipping now available. It's T-minus 6 minutes, 15 seconds and counting till launch. We've been hearing from our team and through SpaceX, the weather is looking great, the range is clear, and the vehicle is ready, both the Falcon Heavy and the X-37B. Now, once we have liftoff, it's going to be a short coverage here today, as we will not get to see any part of the second stage with fairing deployment or vehicle deployment, but the big moment, we'll be watching those two side boosters come back for landing at landing zone 1 and 2 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, also in Florida. Those are expected to land about 8 minutes after flight, so keep a close eye on that. If you do happen to be up the eastern seaboard of the U.S., this is a reminder, you're going to want to head outside very soon and look to the east, as you may be able to see tonight's Falcon Heavy flight. If you're close enough to Florida, you may be able to see the stage separation Boostback burn, and if you're along the Space Coast, you're going to get that incredible double sonic boom and booster landing of the first and second stage as they attempt to land that. We do want to make a quick note. Obviously, there was the big news about the loss of Falcon 9 booster 1058. That was a successful landing, but unfortunately a failed recovery, as it did fall over on the drone ship as it returned back to the Space Coast. That was the flight leader, having completed 19 flights. Today's side boosters have both flown 4 other times. This is their 5th flight. And tonight's center core, which once we see the pad again, you'll see is a brand new booster. That's why it's all nice and white, but they are not attempting to recover today. As we come down just under 5 minutes and counting, we are waiting for the call for strong back retrack. Let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control.
Minutes and 45 seconds. All systems are currently a go for an on-time liftoff. Next up, the trusted structure next to the vehicle, which is known as the strong back, will begin to retract away from the vehicle, and that is in preparation for liftoff.
Strong back retract has started.
And there's that call out. Now, you could see on your screen just below the fairing around the second stage are some clamp arms, and they're starting to slowly open up. Once they are fully open, then the TE can begin to recline away from the vehicle. And the vehicle is nearly fully loaded with propellants and will complete at T-minus 2 minutes. And there you can see on your screen those clamp arms are opening up there. The range is green and ready to support. Weather is 90% go for T0. So
NY LOX load is complete.
very great news with the weather. If for some reason we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow around the same time. And there you can see on your screen, the clamp arms are now fully open. So that TE to the right of the vehicle that you see there, to the right of the fairing, is beginning to slowly move away from the vehicle.
T-minus 3 minutes, 20 seconds, and counting till launch. As always, let's see that go, no go from our TLP community. That's you guys. You can, if you are a member on YouTube, you can use those custom TLP emojis. But as we count down the final 3 minutes of the count, we're going to listen back into SpaceX Mission Control for the launch of the X-37B aboard Falcon Heavy for the very first time. Let's listen back in.
Center core, LOX load is complete.
And we just heard that call out.
Spacecraft is on internal power.
Just heard that call out that the center core liquid oxygen loading is complete. That concludes all first stage vehicle propellant loading. We are still loading liquid oxygen on the second stage, and that should conclude at the T-minus 2 minute mark, which will also conclude all propellant loading for Falcon Heavy. And you can also see these white clouds on your screen. This is normal. This is us just venting out the boiled off liquid oxygen at the liquid.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there's that call out that stage 2 LOX load is complete. That concludes propellant loading on Falcon Heavy. Again, those white clouds that you see around the vehicle are normal. That's us venting out the liquid oxygen that has boiled off of the liquid surface out into the ambient air. Once that cold liquid oxygen meets that warm ambient air, it basically condenses just as you would see water condensing around a cold glass of water. The next event coming up will be Falcon Heavy in startup. That's at the T-minus 1 minute mark.
Ground gas closeouts.
And now that we have finished propellant loading, we are also clearing out the liquid oxygen line on that transporter erector, and that's why you see a little bit more of those white clouds there on your screen. Again, at the T-minus 1 minute mark, Falcon Heavy will be in startup. This is an autonomous vehicle, so the internal flight computers will take over the launch countdown.
Falcon Heavy is in startup.
Great news, there's that call out. That Falcon Heavy is in startup. Now just waiting for the final call from the launch director.
This is the mission director. Go for launch.
And great news with that call out. All systems are go for launch of Falcon Heavy with USSF-52.
T-minus 30 seconds. Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power and liftoff of Falcon Heavy. Go USSF-52. Pushing ground range. M1D chamber pressure is nominal. Power and telemetry.
T plus 50.
At T plus 50 seconds into Falcon Heavy's flight under the power of 5 million pounds of thrust. Falcon Heavy is carrying OTV-7 out to space. Now we are coming up on max Q here in a few seconds.
Max Q.
And great call out there. We have passed through max Q. That is the point of peak mechanical stress on the vehicle, and we've now passed through that. So we do have a few events coming up here. That will be booster engine cutoff, or BECO, separation of the side boosters, followed by side booster boostback burn startup, and then the center core main engine cutoff, or MECO. Now again, those are a few events coming up here. BECO, side booster separation. That'll be the separation from the center core. The center core will continue to carry stage 2 with the payload until it shuts down its engines with MECO and performs a standard stage separation like you see on a Falcon 9. And there you can see on your screen, on your right-hand screen, some views from the side boosters and a really awesome view of Falcon Heavy on your left-hand screen with all of those engines burning really bright there. Coming up on BECO in a few seconds here.
Booster engine cutoff. Side booster separation confirmed. And back show.
Booster boostback startup.
And great news, we were able to also see that live on your screen. BECO, the side boosters have separated from the center core, and we have the startup of the boostback burn on both of those side boosters, looking really awesome there on your screen. Now the side boosters are returning to Florida under the power of 3 engines. Coming up are a few events in rapid succession. That will be the conclusion of the side boosters boostback burn, MECO, stage separation of the center core and the second stage, as well as SES-1, or the NVAC engine igniting on the second stage. SES-1 stands for second stage engine startup. And as I mentioned previously, per the request of our customer, we will not be showing second stage views after SES-1. Additionally, our center core, or stage 1, is expendable today, so we will not be attempting to recover it, but we will be following the side boosters back to land, so you can continue to stay tuned for that. Now we're coming up on the conclusion of the side boosters burn.
Booster boostback shutdown.
Stage separation confirmed. And back ignition and full power.
And there we were also able to see and hear the call-outs for the side boosters boostback burns concluding. We had MECO, or main engine cutoff of the center core, as well as stage separation, and also heard confirmation that the NVAC engine has ignited. Now, as we mentioned before,
Fairing separation confirmed.
and great call out there, also a confirmation that the fairing has separated from the second stage. Again, we will be attempting to recover those fairing halves when they fall back to Earth using our recovery vessel, Doug.
Trajectory is nominal.
Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, the center core was not built to land or be reused. It is expendable, having given its all for the mission.
Los Angeles.
We will say a big thank you to the center core. For the 2 side boosters, the boostback burns have completed, and so far the vehicles are on a good trajectory, coming back to land. And again, with successful second engine start 1, that will wrap up our coverage pertaining to the stage, to the second stage. So we'll focus our attention on the side boosters. Now, those side boosters are currently on their way back to land. In order to land back on land, we typically have 3 burns.
Center core FTS has saved.
We typically have 3 burns. They've already concluded a Boostback burn, which helps them turn back around and head back towards land. The next burn coming up is the entry burn. That's where we'll reignite 3 of the engines on each of those boosters, and that helps slow them down as they enter back into the Earth's atmosphere. Now, if we do have successful landings today, it will mark the 257th and 258th landing of an orbital-class rocket. And those entry burns are coming up here in about 30 seconds or so. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the center core will be expended, and we are not attempting to recover it today.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view inside Hawthorne Mission Control at SpaceX's headquarters there. 6 minutes, 43 seconds into flight. We're waiting for those visuals to come back from the 2 side boosters. It looks like they've turned those cameras back on for us as we wait for the call out for entry burn. There's entry burn startup on 1. Waiting for entry burn startup on the other, and there we have it. Those are staggered startups because they're going to have staggered landings back at landing zone 1 or 2. These boosters are now descending back through atmospheric reentry and are preparing to land at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, actually flying further south than where they launched from, even though they launched in a northern trajectory. You can see the Space Coast and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station coming into view there now, just over about a minute away from touchdown of those 2 boosters, having completed their 5th flight. The second stage is following a nominal trajectory continuing, and as they said, that center core is not being recovered, so no more information on it. It'll eventually splash down in the Atlantic Ocean. As we wait for landing burn, let's listen back in to SpaceX Mission Control.
And safely land back on land. Again, we are targeting landing zone 1 and landing zone 2 for today's landings.
Booster landing burn.
And we heard that call out, and you can see on your screen that the engines have reignited.
Landing leg deploy.
Let's watch as these side boosters touch down for landing.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
And there you can see on your screen and hear the crowd here, very excited. We have successfully landed both Falcon Heavy side boosters on landing zone 1 and landing zone 2. With these 2 side boosters, this marks the 257th and 258th overall successful landing of an orbital-class rocket.
And I'm not going to cut Jesse off, but an absolutely incredible landing there. Beautiful, smooth landing of both the left and right side boosters. If you haven't yet, make sure you follow us on X to see the photos from our TLP rocket chasers who've been out at the press site. But that's not the only launch tonight. There is a live view at Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, just a few miles from where those boosters just landed, where we're counting down to the launch of SpaceX Starlink 6-36 with everyone's favorite booster, Booster 1069, going for its 12th flight. We hope you'll join us back here in just about 2.5 hours for our live coverage of that, but that's going to do it for us for the launch of Falcon Heavy. If you haven't yet, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth, and join us over on the TLP Discord, because here at the launch pad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow. But from our TLP Canada studio, we'll see you in about 2.5 hours for SpaceX Starlink 6-36, because space is better together. We'll see you then.